Laura, do we have anybody when we get to public input? Anybody waiting
No.
or?
No,
So
I don't know
only
who's in
people who might
chambers.
be in this room. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
All right, we have turned over to 5:30. So welcome everybody to this special committee of the whole dealing with one item, 292 Main Street. And before we get to the approval of the agenda, I'll ask the deputy mayor to read the land acknowledgement. Sure.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan. We would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today in Kispookwick, one of the 7 districts of Mi'kma'ki, homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the treaties of peace and friendship, and we thank the Mi'kmaq people for their generosity in sharing their homeland with us. We are all treaty people.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor, motion to approve the agenda, please.
I moved it here. I would move that the agenda be approved as presented or amended.
Okay. Councillor Palmater, and are there any amendments, staff? No, all right. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye, opposed. All right, the agenda is passed. There, of course, there are no minutes. There's no one online for public input. Is there anybody in the audience other than the presenters? Michael, not here for public input. Okay, that's quick. All right, we have one item. There are 2 presentations. I would ask that council hold their questions and comments until Director Lake is going to do a staff update, and then Mr. Modi, are you doing the presentation? Welcome Kevin Geldert again to the council chambers. So staff and then the developers will present, and then after that I will turn to council for questions. Why don't we get any questions out first, and then comments. We do have a motion at 7:30. Should we not be done at that point, I will check in with council. This is quite a big item. I've spoken to staff. It's possible that we may need to have another meeting just to get through this, but I'll check in with council at 7:30, and staff tell me they're prepared to sit here for 5 hours. I don't know if he really means that, but we'll see how we feel. All right, Director Lake.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm just trying to get Jen positioned on the screen so I can see my slides. We'll just see if that works over there somewhere. Okay, so I'm just going to do a very brief overview of that quite substantial reading package that you had. And Tom is going to come up and go through more of the detailed building design. So I'm not going to really get into that. I think certainly when there's comments and questions, I can provide my perspective if that's useful. So this file has been going on since 2016, I think is when it was initiated. And we've had quite a process to get here. Right now, what we're looking at is a request to amend the existing agreement, what that was approved in 2019. There is a small amendment that council approved to that just based on timing. So that's, if you're wondering why we're calling this development agreement amendment number 2, that's why. The existing building that was approved, that's in the development agreement, and we've gone through and sort of compared in the staff report, the 2 versions, was approved under our previous planning documents. So we're using our new planning documents, but in some ways more around the overall intent of our municipal plan. So they certainly meet that and meet a lot of those broader metrics that we're looking for in our downtown. We may go back to this. I just put this in, but I know everyone here knows where this site is. I do want to just talk briefly about the East End Gateway and the importance of this site. And I think anyone that was at the design review committee on Thursday, yeah, it was on Thursday, knows that there was a tremendous amount of importance put on this building as a gateway feature and a real welcoming into our downtown. A lot of people were talking about that pedestrian activity and experience of people on the street as they're walking by this building. There's also our investment in the parking lot that is forthcoming. So the picture that you're looking at here is the actual design of the parking lot that we hope to move forward with in the spring. And so this is, two-headed monster in some ways. We have a big investment that we're making, supported by ACOA and working with the developer on making improvements to this whole area. So I think it's really important to get it right. Just a little bit more on process. To the right on this slide, this is from the public hearing in 2019. Just going through the level of review that we did at that time. So this did go back and forth between design review committee, planning committee, council, in different iterations, different formats, but it took some time to get there. So that was a couple of years, and you see those arrows going back and forth. But that's just to illustrate that it was a fulsome discussion on the original approval. So a more recent process and what's to come, just so we're all on the same page. We did facilitate a meeting with the design review committee, and that's very typical for an application on Main Street in our design review area. Staff try to bring that information to for council's benefit. Some of our PAC members, we happened to have a PAC meeting that day, and so some of the members also joined, new to this file, obviously, but provided some really quality feedback. So all of that's in attachment 1 of the report. We will be holding a public hearing on these amendments, and where I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with this is I do think we need to be very comfortable with what we're advertising for a public hearing. And so if we're advertising for a public hearing under the legislation, it needs to be substantially complete. And so we're not, after the public hearing, making large sweeping changes that necessitates another public hearing. Okay, and so that's really an important point here as far as whether we get through it tonight or we have a second committee of the whole meeting. I think whatever plays out, I just need people to understand that, because that from a timing perspective, to have 2 public hearings really doesn't make a lot of sense. There are still some moving pieces and some details that came out of our last meeting, some really positive discussion that did come out of that. And then I won't go through everything, but these were some of the themes. Certainly the rooftop design was discussed. The eastern facade, I think, was most of the discussion. The entry into town and that face of the building. We did discuss the parking lot, the southern facade or the Main Street facade, and the public space surrounding. The viewing room and the public access that forms part of the original development agreement, moving from the rooftop to the second story, was obviously a part of that discussion. And the other pieces I think are equally important around having bike parking on site, and what the level of parking was and how that came to be at the time. And also around public art and some of that more tactile pieces that can be around the base of the building, where some of it is a parking structure. This is how we speak with the design review committee, is around some of these principles. And I won't go through all of these, but these were in the package. And I think it's important to keep some of these in mind, and really focus on that public realm and the pedestrian experience. I think the broad strokes and metrics of this project are really positive for the town. But I think now we're moving into the details and some of the fine pieces that we really want, I think, to be proud of. That's what I was hearing at the design review committee. People really saw this as a great opportunity to welcome people into Wolfville, welcome people to the Main Street. So just a bit of a summary of what not just the amendments, but the overall project is bringing, because there might be a bit of between the amending agreement and the original agreement. It may seem like not a lot's going on in the amending agreement, but that's assuming that everything from the original agreement is carrying forward. So the overall package approves 60 residential units and commercial uses as permitted in the land use bylaw. There are 2 ground floor units that have been confirmed, and this is just from the report talking about the Harvest Restaurant and a bakery coffee shop the other unit. 27 parking stalls are internal to the building, so those are on the same level as the commercial, essentially just in behind with access from the parking lot. There are commitments around 60 bicycle parking internal to the building, car sharing, a contribution to our parking. I can't see what this says, but just cash in lieu of parking. And we're also working with the developer on installing some public level 2 charging with the parking lot investment that we're making. Other pieces are around energy efficiency. So there was a commitment in the development agreement to go beyond the National Building Code. And at this point, the modeling is looking like it will even go beyond this number that was established in the DA. The streetscaping improvements. So some of the, and this is very typical, piece right up against Main Street is public land. There's been a commitment in the development agreement to improve that area. That's the entire frontage of the building around the podium, the access into the commercial units. So that was valued at the time. The public art contribution. So initially, the north face of the building was primarily where the public art was being discussed. I think coming out of Thursday night, I believe that Tom is going to talk about some other options, but that was a longer term contribution. Just highlighting some accessibility, mostly code related, but this will improve accessibility for people coming out of the parking lot, moving around the building and up onto Main Street. And then finally, carrying that commitment around an amenity area on the rooftop to the second floor. And perhaps still something on the rooftop, but it would be limited to residents of the building. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention this recent document that we've received. So I know council is very familiar with the housing crisis, and certainly we're trying to bring forward some solutions to that, but 60 residential units certainly helps on the supply side in town in a very, very key location. I've included this in the report as well. So this is just a key findings, a simple summary of the number of units that are anticipated to be needed in the town. So I'm just going to leave it there, and I'm going to invite the project architect up here, Tom Amodi, to go through his presentation, and then we can take questions. Okay, just let me help you here for a sec, Tom. This one can sit here. What did I do? Yes, sir. Just have to leave that on. Thank you.
So good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. It's a pleasure to be with you and describe for you the long history and the changes in this project. As Devin mentioned, and Kevin, the owner of the property, is well aware. We've been at this since about 2017. And there's been some years in there with COVID and other issues, which have caused some very significant changes in the construction economy. So that's the kind of overarching sentence. So I'm here to explain the reasons why the scheme has changed, provide the rationale for the changes, and to give you some kind of context about what we've been trying to do. One of the first things that we did do was do this drawing that you see on the screen, which is a photo montage, if you call it, of Main Street. And you can see how, this is, no, it is scrolling, good. You can see that there are some significant buildings on Main Street. For example, this one on the very left and this one here. But many of the buildings, and now we're talking about the northern face of the street, are simple workaday buildings that have been built over the years. Some were distinguished homes that have been converted. Some are additions, which are commercial. Some are student housing that you can see here on the right-hand side. But if you look closely at this, there is really no consistent historical heritage feel to the street. What there is a very vibrant street with a lovely scale and a lot of really strong, friendly feeling about the way that it's inhabited by people, the students, the visitors, the locals, and so on. So it's one of the nicest main streets, if not the nicest main street in the province, in a small town like this one. So I wanted to kind of put that in context because the building we're about to see is trying to pay some respect to that, and I'll try and explain to you how. So this was the previous, I'll go back to the scale before. Maybe this one. This was the previously approved project, which was featured in the development agreement. And it had a number of features, which I think I want to just kind of lay out for you so that it's clear what has changed and what hasn't. So it had a rooftop activity, which was a series of common rooms for visitors. It had this long view screen, which is here and wrapping around the corner like so. And that was principally there in the beginning to shield from the Main Street experience the fourth level, which is the third level, the residential level, from view. And this level in that scheme was set back significantly from the front of the building. So for two things happening. Fourth level set back, view screen added. You could not see the building walking along on the Main Street sidewalks. It had what we call Juliet balconies, which are balconies that you can't step out onto. And it had this kind of long walkway over to the trail and to the ocean, which was all basically all just masonry wall. It had some very solid ramps and steps up to the main level of the courtyard here, the front courtyard. And it had this green vine wall, which was growing up the stairs. So the next version of this project looks like this. And here are the changes. So the rooftop uses have been removed. The common rooms, which were on the rooftop, have been moved to level 2. The fourth floor south wall and part of the eastern wall have been moved to the front. The balconies have been added to give more kind of vibrancy and activity to Main Street. And a gallery has been provided along here. This used to be all masonry, and we responded to some comments from the Design Review Committee and the Planning Advisory Committee that we need to do something which, helps this wall, behind which there are service rooms all the way along, which makes this wall much more vibrant and much more compatible with the feeling of Main Street. So this is one of the things I'm going to describe to you in a little more detail. We have increased the width of the green vine wall we have included a sign on this facade which tries to emphasize the fact that you are now entering the gateway or going you're at the gateway of Wolfville Main Street. So we suggest that the Wolfville logo is prominently displayed here. We put the word sign because we don't have a clear idea of what the word should be, whether that should be Wolfville or welcome or whatever it should be. This is completely up, I think, to a discussion that we can have. We have added seats and landscape along the edge here. The landscape will be seasonal because you'll be doing snow clearing there, so the planters will be removable. And so we put away for the winter season. And the same on up here, there'll be planters and of course tables and chairs and umbrellas. And we have changed what was previously a kind of an opaque guardrail to a completely transparent guardrail to increase the vibrancy on the street. You can see much better what is happening up there on the podium. So I'm going to take you through some of the plan changes so that you can kind of understand why some of these moves are being made. And I'm going the wrong way because my cursor works the other way. Sorry. Here's a side-by-side depiction of the two yeah. Sorry. Oh yeah, do the full page, full screen. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Thank you. So you can see that this face in its overall kind of outline has not changed very much. The green vine is there. This long walkway is there. The podium is there. The windows are more or less the same. The screen is also still here, even though this wall has moved out. And we've retained this screen principally to heighten the feeling of a three-story building rather than have the full extent of the wall. So if you're on this podium or if you're along the sidewalks here, you would still have this screen delineating the 3 stories. And I think it would feel more like a 3-story building than a 4-story building. That's why we have kept it. Now, here's the site plan. You can see this curved boundary. You can tell that this curved boundary touches the corners of the front facade of the building. Where we have been able to put the balconies are where the curve allows us the dimension to do so. So this zone here is where the balconies are. And a similar thing happens at the back where it's a narrow dimension here. And on the northern side, it angles out towards the east. So we can actually put some balconies on this end, on the eastern end. In essence, nothing really has changed on the main level. The layout is exactly as it was through many iterations into the final iteration. All of these are service rooms that I mentioned before. There's very little opportunity to view through this wall because it's all mechanical, electrical systems and so on, and a stairway. And so this experience walking along this ramp, which is a disabled access barrier-free ramp, needs to be somehow enlivened. And this is one of the main messages that we got from our planning advisory and design review discussion. This is the level 2. And here's what's happened. We've removed, as I said, the activities from the rooftop. And the reason that we had to do that was because your building inspector, Mr. Jameson, who we have worked with on other projects before, interpreted the building code in such a way as to say, because this is a 5-story building, he was saying 4 stories and then the rooftop activities, and because it was combustible construction at the time, the building code would not allow gathering occupancy, a common room gathering kind of occupancy on that level. So for quite a while, we've been back and forth with the building inspector on this point. And finally, and I have to say there are other interpretations of this, but his interpretation is a valid one, but rather valid ones as well. If you look around in the Atlantic region, you'll find buildings of this combustible construction with common spaces on the roof. But anyway, having said that, we said, okay, we will change the building to a non-combustible construction, which is lightweight metal studs. And our client, Kevin Gildart, and us went through a whole revision of the drawings to make that possible. New structural engineering, new everything, new fire ratings, a whole lot of changes. And we went through all of that to find that in the current construction economy, that version of this project is not economically affordable. So we went back to the drawing board, as they say, and we removed everything off the rooftop and went back to combustible construction, which is basically standard wood frame construction that you see everywhere. And this is where we are now. Now, in order to maintain the common room activities, we were, again, going by the building code, put them on level 2. So here is this common room now. We have eliminated 2 units on level 2 to make a common room. And we have changed one of these residential suites, this one here, into a fitness room. So in the common room, you have these other activities to which people could be invited. On the next level up, and by the way, you can tell here now, these are the balconies that were allowed by the boundary setbacks in this zone right here. And apart from these changes, not much change. But then we have lost 3 units out of the building, and we had to find a way to put them back. This is the level above. There have been no changes on this level, except that this is now the balcony zone on the south face, and also on the, I'm sorry, this is not the level above. This is a detail of that level. This is still the same level. This is the common room. This is the fitness room. This is the balconies on the northern face. This balcony is set back to make it larger so that people can come walk out and stand and look at the beautiful views. There would probably be some lightweight kitchen facilities in here. And then here is the new fitness room. And now we see the level above, which is the 3rd level. And nothing has changed here except for the balconies at the front and back. And then this is the level 4, where we have previously had this setback area, which was a large terrace area that was dedicated to the room, to the units that were up here. So this wall moved out, and this portion of the wall also moved out, basically to regain the residential space that we lost on level 2. So we've added in the residential space on level 4. And some of the bigger units in this level have been converted in order to get us back to the same 60 units. So you see some small units here, and some of these units have been reassigned in a different way. You can see here. So balconies are added here as well, and balconies on the back face as well. This is that larger scale version of exactly the same thing. This was the previous roof. There were 2 common rooms for the invitation by residents, and a 3rd smaller common room to which there was, by invitation, access for visitors. And this whole piece of the building has gone. the stairways still come up, elevator, and that's because we don't show this here, but there's a large number of mechanical equipment housed in this portion. Used to be further forward. Now, because there's no other building here, the mechanical equipment will be more in the center, so it's even less visible. And the maintenance of these, I mean, some of these are very large units because they handle a commercial space, they handle all of the 60 units, and they handle the hallways and common areas. So all of this mechanical needs to be maintained, and it's easier to do it if you have access, easy access to it. So finally, this is the image, the final image, the size that I mentioned earlier of this vine wall has been increased. And I guess I want to conclude by just mentioning again the 10 changes. The 10 changes are: number one, the rooftop uses have been removed. Number two, the common rooms have been moved to level 2. Number 3, the 4th floor south wall has been moved out to align with the walls below. Number 4, balconies have been added on the north face and the south face. Number 5, there's this gallery opportunity here, which I'd like to just mention in a moment in more detail. Seating has been added, and landscape has been added on the main level and on the podium level. Transparency has been increased so that what you can see up here on this level is much more easy to see, and it's much more vibrant. And the sign has been added, this sign here, which is now obscured by this. But so we have 2 ideas about what this gallery would be. The first one is that we have public art, which is already captured in the DA, that there would be regular competitions among students and artists for putting public art on the building. That public art was previously on the north face, facing the trail, and some of that has had to be moved because there are now screens around some propane tanks at the back, so that the propane tanks are not visible. So this could be public art here. The other thought that we have had is that there could be a gallery of probably glass-mounted images of the history and the evolution of the town of Wolfville. So it's a history gallery rather than an art gallery. And we're quite open to either or both of those, so that visitors who are walking through to the trail could enjoy the art and the history and be somewhat connected to the evolution of what, you know, this lovely, vibrant town. That would include, of course, probably images from Acadia, images of the wine industry, images of the commerce that came and comes and goes because of the nautical nature, the shipbuilding nature, and the commerce that happens out in the ocean. So there's a lot of, and I've had a little bit of a dig around in the archives to see what kind of images might be useful here. And there's some fantastic images that you could use. So this is now called a gallery, and you walk through it on the way to the trail. I think that's really all I have, unless there are some questions.
I'm sure there will be. I'm going to now open it up to members of council. I know some of you have many questions, so that we can all share the question time. If you have, I'll keep a list, and the deputy mayor is going to help me keep a list too. But if you have a question, if you could just ask a single question. If you have a related follow-up, that's fine. But rather than go through your 19 questions, we'll come back to you. We'll circle around. So, Deputy Mayor.
I'm just wondering, thank you for that presentation. And thank you, Devin, for your very comprehensive package that you sent out to all of us. It's much appreciated. I liked having all that background information. That was very useful. I'm just wondering if you have an image, and I liked the one that you put out of Main Street that showed all the buildings. Do you have anything that includes this building on that? So we have more of a comparison in terms
Well,
of,
we did have one from the previous version.
Can
but
you
we
just-
don't have one yet of this one.
do you have one of the previous version that
I
we could
don't
look
have
at?
it with me, but I can send it to you if you like it.
Okay, because I would like to see how this fits into that stream of thing. I think that would be very helpful. So thank you. And do you have
Can
a
I just
picture?
mention in that regard that your Main Street building height for this area is 4 stories. So we comply with that.
Thank you. I also would like a picture of the west wall, if you have one.
There again, I don't have that as it rendered like this,
Yeah,
but it would be quite similar. So, but well, we haven't thought about a gallery on that side. It's possible. That's a fairly narrow walkway from the parking lot out to Main Street.
Mhm.
Again, service rooms mostly, garbage room, for example, in one corner.
Mhm.
But we can render the building the same way from that angle and can provide that.
It's just when I notice in the corner seems to be stepped back on this. Am I
But that's
looking at?
because of the boundary line.
Okay,
I can
Right.
show you what I mean. Here. Let's see, am I going the wrong way? Yes, I'm going the wrong way. See, there's
I
a
see.
setback here.
Okay.
That's the one you mean.
yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
So the boundary line forces that setback. Yeah.
Other questions? Counselor Elliott,
Sorry.
then you can go, you can go next. Counselor Elliott.
I don't really understand the proposed second floor amenity space. It seems to me that it's a kind of pale imitation of what we had before on the roof. And I can't imagine that the public would be enticed to enter the building and gain permission to go up to the second floor to see the view. If you stand on the dike, it's about the same view. Am I not right?
Well, I can describe for you why it's there and why it's that side. So when we have to go back to combustible construction, the building code of Nova Scotia limits the size of that space to 10% of the floor space. Number one, and it cannot be higher than the second level. If we could have made it on any higher level, we would have, but the building code forbids it. And we are now, again, in collaboration with your building inspector, trying to make sure that everyone is perfectly happy.
Counselor Palmer? You don't have your light on, but I know that you have to put your light on.
Oh, I hate to put my light on so you can hear me. Yeah.
That's right.
In your smaller units, how many are short-term and how many are long-term?
Well, that's a very good question that I'm not really able to answer clearly for you. You know, it might be best answered by our client, Kevin Gildart. Is that possible, Mayor?
I'm sorry, I was looking at who's got their hands up. Say again.
The question was why, or can we tell how many of the units are short-term or long-term?
Can you?
Well,
Kevin is welcome.
Can I defer that to
Yeah,
my client?
absolutely.
Thank you.
We've got a moving mic. Two moving,
Hmm.
three of them.
Yeah, hi and good evening. I respect the question and I understand the question. So my answer is not in any way meant to be evasive. From our point of view, there's very, very, very positive economics in having short-term embedded in the building. So I just throw that out there. Very, very positive for us. The challenge currently with short-term accommodation is driven by the events of the last couple years. And what I mean by that is the hospitality business went in the tank. The banking community basically runs from the hospitality business now as new offerings. And so we have modeled this building such that we can convert and match to market needs, if you will. And so if this was pre-COVID, our numbers for hospitality would have been quite high. At this point in time, what we have to do from a financing point of view is we have to prove the viability of the product, the development, if it is all long-term rental, which I'm perfectly happy with. So we have our financing in place for this project based upon every unit being long-term. The market will help me evolve, if you will, or have the building evolve. And so to speak to your question, when we designed this building, we designed it in such a fashion that we've got a lot of flexibility, and that flexibility can be seen in a couple ways. One is we have 2 elevators, and the 2 elevators allows us to do a segmentation within the building. There can be 1 elevator that essentially goes to a floor or 2 floors or whatever. So the best answer I can give you is we recognize a need within the town. Actually, there's 2 needs within this town, and they are running down parallel tracks. You need more long-term accommodation, and the hospitality industry can use a boost as well. And we are looking for returns on our investment, admittedly. But today, in terms of me being able to say how many of these will go down this path or that path, I can't, to be honest. But if you take a look at the design of the building and the flexibilities that we have inherent in there, we have provisions to deal with both sides of the market. So again, please don't take that as being evasive. It's just meant to be an honest answer as to the complexity of price pointing and allocation in this market.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Ingham, and you'll need to take you're muted. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not really, I had the same question as Wendy and Ian actually, but I'm not sure that the answer that Mr. Geldart just gave was satisfactory, because I would be concerned about knowing the configuration. As you change the configuration on the inside, I was concerned, like, is there going to be more short-term rentals, because you probably had to take some space out of one thing. So that was sort of a concern to me initially. In the first development agreement, I think it had 10 permanent, so hotel units. So my question would be, are you going to be trying to put those on a floor that is different from long-term rentals? Because, you know, there's people coming and going. So all of a sudden, if you have a short-term rental, and then you also have, permanent rentals, people aren't going to be too happy about moving in there. And then all of a sudden having, people coming and going all the time, right? I mean, you hear this. So it's, you didn't actually give a concrete answer, but how soon would you be able to answer that?
Mr. Modi, maybe you can answer that from a design perspective, Mr. Modi.
Pardon?
I'm wondering if you can answer that from a design perspective.
Well, I can only build on what our client Kevin Geldart has said. We have kept in mind that there are 2 elevators. The preference that I would have, and I'm not, a realtor or a person running short-term rental in any way, is that, if there is a floor that would be predominantly short-term rental, that would be all the short-term rentals would be on one level, accessed by one of the elevators.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Okay, well, Kevin, Mr. Geldart, you said that you'd had financing in place, but Do you have a builder and do you have costing from a builder? Do you have a builder? Yes. And you have costing from a builder? Current costing? Correct.
Thank you. Ian?
Well, I'll put a footnote to that. We can even name who the builder is, right? The RCS Construction is the construction manager. They have provided the budget, which has basically resulted in this change.
Mhm.
Because we know pretty well how much more expensive it is to build in lightweight, non-combustible metal frame.
I just have a follow-up. Can I ask to?
Okay, I'm going to go to
Mhm.
Counselor McKay and then to Counselor Elliott.
I'm just gonna build off their
Yes, sure.
questions. So how many units are on each floor? Because that will give us a basis of if you close off one floor or not. So what's 2, 3, and 4? Because if you're gonna make one of them short-term rentals, it's gotta be all of one. So if we know what's on each one, it could be a minimum of that or a maximum of whatever the other
The
is.
floors, I mean, you have this package.
Yeah.
So you can have a look, but in basically, I'm sorry.
It was hard to see how many were actually units compared from one to the other with the common space. I think that's that.
So here is level 2. You can see that the corner unit is a laundry. And as I mentioned, this is now a common room and this is fitness room. So you have 4 units here. You have 5 units here, that's 9.
About
And
20.
then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 units here, that's 13, 14. This is now a fitness center. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 14 and 7. 21.
20.
The other floor above it has,
60 units,
whoops,
not
I'm
the
going,
roughly
I
the
keep going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
The other
Okay.
floor above it has 22 units. And the final floor here has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 units. Some of which is short, I mean, small.
2, 21, 14.
So that's
That's
my math.
55. 55.
My math could be.
Your math.
one
Okay,
unit off.
so it's
There are
about the
60
same with a little bit less on one floor.
60 units in the building, that's all.
Okay. Counselor Elliott, then the deputy mayor, and Ian, I'll come back to you afterwards. Counselor Elliott?
Okay, so Mr. Modi, you made reference to the numerous rooftop mechanical units. 5th floor. Are they gonna be screened or somehow visually minimized in this
Yes.
iteration?
Yes, they will be. Previously, they were screened. Now they can be moved to the middle of the roof, so that would be, I think, almost impossible. They're only like about this high. But they are large and heavy. And so to maintain them with equipment or to replace them, it's much better to use stairs and so on and elevators. So they would be in the center of the roof, over the hallway, centered on the hallway, which is actually a little more economical for those things. And they would be screened, yes.
We won't see them.
You will not see it.
I'll hold you
I
to
can
that.
guarantee you will not see them.
Deputy mayor?
Unless you go up there, then you'll see them.
I have a question around the greenery in the wall. In fact, when I look back at your development agreement from 2019 in 5.192, the developer, or no, sorry, I'm on the wrong here. The developer shall install a wall which is partially or completely covered with greenery that includes a growing medium such as soil, water, or a substance on the eastern exterior side of the development. Now, to be honest, I've been attending all these presentations since 2017. And I remember the first one, I was quite pleased to see what I would have interpreted and what I interpret this to be a living wall as opposed to a green wall. And we were doing a lot of research at NSCC at the time around living walls because we were involved in doing the one at the Ivany campus. And I saw this as an opportunity to have what I would call green art on that wall. I saw it as an opportunity to provide something very interesting as you're coming in that is green, that speaks to what we're trying to do as a town in terms of greening or promoting climate change and all of those issues. And I still think that would have been an important feature, because what was done at the Ivany campus was that the plants are selected based on a very complicated climate there with frozen fog and a lot of salt in the air and all of those things. So that kind of research would have to have been done here. What I see now really is a vine that, from what in talking to people about a vine this high, this would probably take about 8 years to grow from where it is to the top of the roof. So I think for the first, let's say 6 years at least, we would really not have a lot of greenery there. I'm wondering whether you'd really reconsider going back to that living wall. I know that there are a lot of new mechanisms that have been developed since the Ivany campus was installed. Places like the Netherlands have a lot of very interesting new ways of providing self-watering systems, things that may not require a lot of daily maintenance, right? That they would be required, obviously it would require maintenance, but that part of it has really been reduced. And so I see that as a potential to have artwork, as I would define it, but green artwork instead of just a vine that will simply take a long time to fill that space. And it's interesting, I mean, it's green, probably not green most of the year. It will be green for part of the year, but we will be looking at something that isn't green for a lot of the year. And I don't know what kind of maintenance that would require, but was there any discussions given to that?
Yeah. So we did visit your NSCC wall. We have talked a lot with the landscape architect who designed and basically detailed that wall. And you're absolutely right. It's quite the maintenance issue, a wall like that. For that wall at NSCC is relatively low and easy to access. This wall is 4 stories high. So I think partly or mainly for that reason, we're in agreement with your development officer that this would comply. Now, I know it's not the green wall art that you had in mind. I think there are species that would stay green most of the year, not the ones that you see generally. And we're also, and I didn't make this clear, so it's my apologies, there would be a planter at the top so that the vines would creep down, as well as a planter at the bottom where the vines would climb up. And the two together, I think, would meet relatively quickly, probably half the time, or maybe hopefully a little less. And there's the same thing on the other side. So on the western face. So, the difficulty of maintaining all of that height and making it, look good all year round is what led us to where we are now. So it's a living wall, but it's not what you're describing now.
Okay, thank you. I'm keeping track. Councillor Ingham, Councillor Palmater, and if anybody else wants to speak, please just put your lights on. I'm watching the lights then. So Councillor Ingham, Councillor Palmater, Councillor McKay, and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. I have a rather broad question, but it relates to timeline, so maybe Devin can chime in. So not being on council when this initially got approved, 2017, you started talks with staff. 2019, it got approved by council with a development agreement. Then you came back in 2022 and you asked for an extension on that, and we did grant that to you. and now you're back with some amendments. So here's the big question, and the one that I get asked quite a bit is, what assurance can you give the public, number one, that this is actually going to get started? Number two, what is a timely manner? And number three, what is substantive?
What was number three?
What was number
sorry?
three?
Yeah.
Substantive.
Substantive.
Substantive. Is that right?
What is a substantive completion? That might be a
Oh,
different question.
sure. I can speak to at least one and two. So the piles are already in the ground. So construction in one way has begun. So that's significant investment in that portion of the building. So now there have to be some adjustments made to that because of the changes in the structure and so on. But my understanding is that as soon as we get an agreement, we will apply for a construction permit. And as soon as we get a construction permit, we will start construction. So that's, I think, number one. What was
What was your second one, Councillor Ingham?
Yes, in the package it had, maybe Devin wants to clarify this, because when we extended the agreement, we wanted to know when work would be done in order for them to come back, because it was a 2-year extension, right? So what is a timely manner on things to get things started? And how long do you figure this project's going to take to get finished?
Well, a timeliness depends partly on the permitting, like I mentioned. As soon as we have permits, the financing is in place to start. My guess is that this is somewhere in the realm of an 18-month build. And so you would be, if we got a permit in the next, say, 3 months, then, you know, you'd have a building 18 months after that. So 2025 summer, something like that.
And Devin, do you want to answer what substantive means?
Just one thing before that. So this amending agreement is also extending the timeline. And so we've pushed that out till 27, 28, which gives appropriate time to work through these issues. And also doesn't have us back in front of council if an approval is given is the main piece. Substantially complete. I think that really is a context. Like, we don't have a definition written down that's substantially complete, because a building of this nature, you'd have to be close to occupancy, probably drywalling, but it really depends on a lot of factors. If something were to come up and the building wasn't quite substantially complete, but there was a good reason, again, that would have to be weighed by council. Yeah, I just want to ask Jen, what's the concern around substantially complete?
Well, because I mean, I did see the 7 or 8 years. I don't know if that was for the first development agreement or the second one. I guess I got confused reading all the package. And it seems like you said if it's not substantially complete, then they come back to council. Well, they've come back to council again. So I'm just, rewording what the public has told me when I walk by there. That's probably one of the most number one questions I get. When is this going to get started? It hasn't got started. So I'm just relaying what the public has said, and some confidence has been lost. So what you're saying, I'm just trying to confirm that say we do approve this as a council. When would all the permits get in place? It is winter time. When could it be started? When can we start to see a little bit of progress is my concern. It was a pretty hot topic back in 2019, so it hasn't progressed anywhere. I understand there's COVID. I understand everything that the architect has explained. I'm just trying to get the exact details out to the public so they're aware of it.
I think it'd be best if Kevin, do you want to speak to that as far as your construction timing?
Okay if I sit?
Sure.
I'd like to answer your questions, Councillor Ingram, as best I can. So the answer I'll give you is this, and it's let's call it the honest to God answer. We had this building designed, as Mr. Emoti has said. We went forth, we had it priced for construction and so on and so forth. And we were happy with all of our numbers. Upon review by your building inspector, we ended up in a, we have found ourselves to be in opposing camps on interpretation of the building code. So what we attempted to do at that point in time was to make some conversions to the building that met the building inspector's interpretation, which we did. And in terms of activity on the site, and I just say this as a matter of fact, we had heavy equipment on that site June, July, and part of August of this past year. And we were retesting all of the piles we have on the site. The changed construction methodology as proposed by the building inspector caused us to retest every piece of steel that we embedded on that site. And the reality is those tests yielded results that we said these were installed based upon a certain methodology. If we change the methodology, we are going to have to do some incremental work on our underground services. So in spite of the fact that a lot of people haven't seen, let's call it tangible activity, I assure you, we have been doing our best to get this project coming forth. So with respect to timelines, and the answer I can give you is very simple. We have a concrete contractor who is under contract to do this building, and I speak with him almost every week, and he is prepared to start, as are we, when the revised permit, if you will, can be applied for and awarded. But what I say, my incentive to get this project moving is very, very high. So I give you my personal commitment. We've had financing in place for years. We want to start this project. And some of the things that we've been forced to deal with are unfortunate, but they're realities. I sit in the seat and I accept it. So are we committed to start? Very much so, on an ASAP basis. And we hope for positive response from this meeting tonight to allow us to move to a point where your constituents can say there's something tangible happening. So I apologize for perceived delays, but I can advise you, we are doing everything we can to get this project moving.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to move through tonight. We need to keep our answers kind of tight. And I understand, Kevin, what I heard Mr. Modi say is that once this group approves, I don't know, permits are 3 months. That's out of our hands now, but let's say, and you say it could be a couple of years. So Devon's timeline of 2028 might be very generous.
I think so.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
But I just want to point out one other project, just that when we talk about substantially complete, we look at Peter Polly's project. I would say a lot of people from the exterior would think of that as being substantially complete. And because of various reasons, that's taken a long time to finish that project. So there's some, we're being a bit conservative, just given all the different issues in the construction industry right now.
Councillor Palmer.
Sorry.
It's on.
I see there's no power lines on your drawings here. So how does power enter here?
Well, that's a very good question. It was discussed at length at the Planning Advisory Committee. So first thing to say is we don't have much control about where the power enters, because Nova Scotia Power has that control. So the current scheme is that there is a power pole somewhere to the right of this image that you on the wall that you can see on the screen, I should say. The lines come down and there's a transformer pad just to the east of the driveway in and out of the site. That transformer pad will be landscaped, so it's part of your Eastern Gateway scheme. And from there, it goes underground into the building.
So, sorry, it's on the lawn there. Am I right?
No,
Kevin?
it's.
Whose land is
deeper.
that?
Pardon?
Whose land is that? Nova Scotia Power's?
No, it's town line.
It's on our land. Yep.
So it's underground. You put in a
How big is this?
transformer.
Well, I don't have the dimensions of it. All I know is that Nova Scotia Power controls it. So see this drawing on the screen right now?
Mhm.
It's somewhere here, right about here.
In the middle of that open lawn?
And it will be screened by, it will be landscape screened around it. Now, we don't make this decision. Nova Scotia Power is in control here, not us. And then from this position here, it comes underground, so there's no wires across the driveway.
So it's on town land.
It's on town land, yes.
Might I give you a short answer?
No, Kevin, no. Just confirm with Devin, I believe this has been at council before, when Director Thomason was here.
Yeah, there's a longer history to this with when Kelton was with the town, and discussions with Nova Scotia Power, discussions with the developer, and this is where that had landed. We're certainly registering that as a concern both on Thursday, and we hear you. I assume you're concerned with that location on the public
Well, yeah,
property.
that's green, well, first of all, it's green space.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's green space. And I don't, yeah, okay. I didn't know that's what you're thinking about.
It's something, I mean, we can talk about it with the developer again. It came up quite strongly on Thursday night as well.
Councillor McKay.
Sorry, I want to go back to the wall, but I'm gonna. There's lots of things circling around and around, so I do want to, so I'll just voice my concern on having that come back, even though I don't recall that in being in the middle of it, and obviously it was, but I think having a transformer in the middle of the green space is unfortunate at best. So let's see if we can find a different space for it. Can I follow up to the
Absolutely.
the wall? What, I was in the same place with Deputy Mayor. You got too long of a last name. To when we first discussed that and what it was going to be a living wall. But I don't understand how it's going to be green fast. Like, so we're 7 years out or 5 years out from building and then another 5 years to get a green space. And I don't understand the sign. I don't think the town needs to be marketed on someone else's building, so I don't enjoy that. I would much prefer it be a green space because that is what that space is meant to be. It's our Eastern Gateway. It's where we come in. People will gather. It takes us to the trail. It was supposed to be what we, our welcoming space. So I don't know how it got from latitude 45 on the last one to a waffle sign on it and why it's not green.
Well, the answer to that first part of your question is that the design review committee and the the planning advisory committee I'm trying to be accurate, were critical, let's say, of a large sign that was advertising one building at the gateway. So I think this is I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for our client here. We are open to putting whatever you think makes sense on that sign. And if,
Or not a sign.
or
not a sign.
or no sign.
Okay, I just didn't know how that, I was like.
If the sign is in the way of getting approval,
Yeah.
then there will be.
I'm
no
not gonna
sign.
rest on that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You're good. Yeah. All right, Councillor Elliott, Deputy Mayor, and then. Okay.
we'll go around the table.
Well, that's probably easier to do.
I think we've all seen quite clearly that the proposed building largely fills the site. And that's why there's no room for a transformer in the building. I am concerned that there may be some legal issues that could develop from people coming in the driveway and, you know, they've been checking out the wine offerings and maybe somebody hits the transformer and where, you know, can we get a legal opinion on liability there?
Probably not tonight, but
No,
I'm
no.
sure Devin will take that. Okay, but Deputy Mayor.
Could I
Um,
just say one thing, very short? The transformer is not next to the driveway. The transformer is away from the driveway. It is surrounded by screens and landscape, so it's probably not even visible. It's just a landscape element inside which there's a transformer.
I think the point is it's on a town park.
It's on the
That's,
town park, but it's not, no one's gonna hit it.
yeah, but,
On the way in, yeah.
so follow up with that. Deputy Mayor.
so thank you, Mayor Donovan. I just, thank you, Councillor McKay, for following up with that green wall, and I agree that there should be no signage. I found that was really, and that I appreciate that you heard the comments that were made. I did want to just clarify that the meeting that was held on Thursday was a design review committee meeting, and members of PAC were invited to attend. But the current committee of the Planning Advisory Committee has not met to discuss this project. We've not had a formal PAC meeting around this project. Now, there were notes that Director Lake sent out that had a PAC meeting, but that was in 1919 or 2019 or whatever. That did not relate to our current PAC. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I have two questions. One was around the elevator. I still have a question around the need, because that was really highlighted on Thursday, the need for the two elevators and the fact that the elevator shaft on the east side really sticks out and is quite
Well, the
prominent.
elevator is in the center.
So what is that-
Elevator, so
that
that's a
rise?
stair.
So that's just the stairs.
Stair.
Okay. So that was
And we've
my,
had, just again, a very short, we have had design, let's say, design ideas that we would not have that stair.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that the building looks squat and no one hasn't got the kind of like compelling, let's say, image that if that living wall or green wall goes all the way up there,
Mhm.
it will look far, far better than if it's cut off.
just
separately.
cut off. Okay. And the other question I have, it has to do with the changes on the fourth floor and this removing the step back, because I was very happy with the step back. And I still, when I look at these two images, I confess I prefer the one with the step back that you had before. I just want to clarify, is the only reason for removing that step back the changes you had to make to the second floor?
We were trying to, under guidance from our client, to get as much of the floor space back.
Right. So I guess just, can I make a comment?
We're going to make comments after everyone has asked questions.
I confuse my questions with my
Yes.
comments, so I'll just
Stop talking. Yeah, and I get to make that comment. I know what you're gonna make. I got good words for it. Councillor Palmer.
Okay, in regards to your parkade, I got two questions over regards to that. So the way it's designed right now, you're essentially taking 3 parking spaces out of the parking lot for access to your building, correct?
3 parking spaces for access, just 1 second. Okay, so access is here,
Yep,
and this is equivalent roughly of two spaces.
but the road, the driveway, or okay, so it's
Yeah.
2, maybe it's
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, and that's gonna be forever. That's 2 parking spaces forever,
Yes,
right? And we're gonna plow it and we're gonna look after it, correct?
Well, I'm not 100% sure who plowed.
It's a public parking lot.
The public parking lot, so we're given, so the access is gonna be through a public parking lot.
And this, I just for a bit of history, this was a big part of the debate during the initial consideration of this. So it was essentially on balance by running all these vehicles across the sidewalk on a busy main street or pull them around into a parking lot and bring them into the rear. It was preferred during that time. And I think best practice urban design would tell you not to put a parking garage off the main street. That's why that decision was made. Just that, and we didn't look at revisiting that.
Who's we didn't?
Just as part of this amendment package, that's not contemplated to change, is all I'm saying. Not to say, I keep going, I'm just giving you the history. Yeah,
Okay, all right, well, I'm saying it's 5 years later. And I think we should look at that again, because now you're parking 27 cars underneath there. Correct? Is that the number? 27 cars. Now, and so for 60 grand, we're giving, so where are you gonna park those cars at the rest of the cars at nighttime right now? Like, somebody tell me where 24-hour parking in Wolfville is right now. Anybody? Anybody? 24-hour parking. Where is it? 24-hour?
No.
I don't think so.
It is in the
We've had a couple
is
of pilot projects using that lot, and we've used Railtown as well for 24-hour all season parking.
All season, in the wintertime.
I think
Last year.
we did last year. Yeah,
How many spots do we have? Roughly.
Is that parking lot now?
No, all season parking.
Don't have the number for you, but we did trial it in there. I couldn't tell you the number that we assigned.
We did a trial, and what was the feedback from your guys, Alex? That they had a plow around them.
We didn't get any negative feedback from Public Works. So it was a success in my mind.
Right, okay, so I'm gonna suggest that the $60,000 is not enough by today's standards. Like, it's 5 years, 7 years, I don't know how many years later, but that's. I don't like it, I'll tell you that right off the get-go. So that's an opinion, that's an opinion.
Yes. Question.
The question is $60,000 enough? That's the question. And I don't think it is. That's a question.
And a comment.
And a comment. But it's a question. Yeah. The other, okay.
You go ahead, then Councillor McKay.
How many square feet are the smaller rooms?
The smaller units are roughly 450 square feet.
Units?
And do we know what like the standard hotel room is? Anybody?
Depending on which hotel you go, it's about half.
Erin's listening, she can answer about her hotel room
Yeah.
this week.
And can you show me on the design where in the parking lots, where the bike parking spots are?
Yes, there are bike racks or bike hooks, vertical bike parking on this wall all the way through. And on the stair wall and on this stair wall. So there is sufficient bike parking for bikes being hooked on the wall all around the garage.
Okay, so you're gonna pull in, so you're gonna somehow or another mark off so the cars don't pull all the way in. That's what you're in.
Yeah, I mean, the cars only come to this line here. On this side, we don't have bike rack, but we do have them all along there, all along both stairs.
So
But there's
those
sufficient bike parking per the DA in there.
there is.
Yeah.
And which one of the parking spots are gonna be your charged ones?
I don't know the position, but I think we have what, 20 EV charging, 24 EV charging stations.
Will be EV charged.
Yeah.
24 of your parking spots.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor McKay.
Thank you. I've got questions on some of the units. How many of the units are barrier free?
The building code requires 3 per 20, so there's 3.
There's 3 per 20 and there's 60 units, so that would be
No, 3,
So 9.
excuse me.
9. Yeah.
One per 20, so
Oh,
there's 3.
1 per
Oh,
20.
so there's only 3
There's 3, yeah.
and you only plan on doing the minimum.
That's what the building code requires, so we're doing what the code requires. Yeah.
One could do more, I guess, is one of them. That was a question.
So comment.
And yeah, and what about, are there any affordable units in this development? Was there any part of that at all or all market?
I'll have to defer to my client on that one.
Short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Elliott.
Okay, throw another one at you. The podium you refer to, I would call it like a plaza. In the first iteration, was there not some like lawn or green space there? It looks now like it's all gonna be concrete. And wouldn't it benefit from some better landscaping?
Well, the answer is twofold. In the first iteration, we didn't really show much behind this balustrade here, but it was all paved the first time around, and it's all paved now. But we would like, I mean, conceptually, there will be a lot of landscaping planters that can be removed during the winter and stored. But there was no lawn up there in any of the elevations.
Okay, and so the green that shows in the first drawing on the corner,
Here,
yeah,
so that's down on the sidewalk level.
okay, that doesn't appear in the second drawing.
Well,
So-
it's a very good question. So when you go to the side plan, there is some space here, right here, on the corner, which is possible to make into lawn or into paving. The ramp you can see goes up here, and there's a stair up here too, but there is a small amount of space that could become lawn. Yes.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Could you describe the finishing materials that will be used? Like I noticed there's a different color of the brick, going from a darker, which I think my impression is that the darker brick was kind of more consistent with what we've seen on Main Street. I could be wrong,
Mhm.
but now into a lighter brick. And then there's other finishings that I don't really know what they are. If you could just describe.
So as you mentioned, this is masonry down here. The color that we're showing is a kind of a mid-gray. We're quite open to thinking about darker if that's in the way as well as the sign, we'll make it darker. The rest of the material is this material is mid-density fiber cement panels. And this material probably mid-density fiber cement siding. So there's no vinyl siding anywhere. We are also looking at the possibility of this being a metal siding that has a wood grain on it.
Mhm.
So, but we're trying to always limit our number of materials to no more than 3.
Mhm.
So it will be somewhat in this range of color that you see here, but some of it might get a little darker or browner or whatever, because a lot of this is governed by what's available as well.
But those horizontal ones where you have the arrow,
Here?
no, further down, the middle, those there.
Here,
In this iteration, they're much wider
yes.
than they were in the other. And
They
why
were.
is that?
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is that the energy target for this building is very high. It's 40% higher than the code requirement. So one thing we had to do in order to achieve that is reduce the window.
Okay.
And the second thing we did when we put the balconies here, they're all they're not cantilevered, they're not connected directly to the inside structure. They're bolted on with a thermal break between the balcony and the wall. And so the balconies don't drain the energy out of the building. So the answer to your original question is the windows are somewhat smaller because of the energy requirement that it's trying to make.
So that would apply to the balconies as well.
Yeah, the balconies don't impact because they're not
Right.
connected to the
But
structure.
the windows are also smaller there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to build on that question before I go to Councillor Palmer. It's very hard having to go last on questions. And I'll make the comment, I do not find those balconies unattractive. We have another building not too far from this building, that in the rendering, the balconies were attractive and they drive me crazy every day if I look at them. Can you give us some guarantee or confidence that the look that you have there is not going to end up looking like it's not painted or it's not finished or it's just halfway done? You know
Yes.
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yes, I can. So these are metal frame balconies, which probably have, I'm not sure whether it would be a paint applied after construction, but that they would be painted.
So not raw wood that's just left.
No,
for what-
these are all metal frame. They're metal frame balconies. And what you
Okay.
see underneath is, that is yet to be determined, but that's going to be a finish that's good to look at.
Okay.
We don't have a clear idea
Sure.
of what
Understood.
that would be.
Councillor Palmer?
You're gonna put a generator in this somewhere, obviously, I think you are, or maybe you're not.
There is going to be a generator and I'm not 100% sure where it is located on the main level, and it's in one of the service rooms.
And how big will it be?
At the moment, it's designed to run the minimal, the kind of life safety services, the lighting and so on.
Are you not gonna run into a problem with having a generator inside the building that's occupied?
No, that'll be fine.
In the composted and, sorry, if I continue.
One more and then Councillor Elliott.
Okay, sorry, don't want to cut you off. The compost and garbage and stuff that's gonna be inside the building, like it's in the parkade.
Yes,
Do you think you have enough room for that if you have a restaurant?
well, we believe so. That's a very good question. So this room that's assigned here, some of the space that's under the landing can be used a little bit, some of the space under the stairs. We've done, and there's a number of different ways of storing both the compost and the garbage, and you very well know that the contractor who removes all that is going to be involved. So if we have to grow this room a little bit, we'll try and do it, but at the moment, we think it's sufficient. It might be that some of the commercial area has to have its own garbage storage.
The restaurant or
Yeah. And they'd have to remove their own to put it out for pickup.
Councillor Elliott, if you could turn your light off when you're
sorry.
not asking.
I think I read somewhere that you have confirmed tenants for the commercial space. Am I right? And are they okay with the 5-year open completion date?
We have
Right.
a lineup of people who
Right.
wish to take our commercial space.
Mike,
Mike,
do you miss the mic?
Just looking at the chairs.
just that quick answer again is great.
Quick answer. The people who wish to take our commercial space would like to see immediate occupancy, but they're well aware of our schedule.
Jen? Right. I have a question to Director McLean, if I may. And it reflects a concern with one of the early questions about short-term rentals, which are commercial, and long-term rentals. And we have one of our innkeepers in the room. I think it's right that we do need more hotel space in this town. I hear that all the time. Mike McLean, how does, in terms of tax assessment, it is my understanding that the innkeeper's taxes per room are probably higher because they're commercial than if those were permanent, year-long rentals. If I'm correct on that, how do we, when somebody says, well, we might have short-term or we might not, and since we don't do the tax assessment, how do we manage that? That came up with micro boutiques, and I think the answer from staff at the time was we can't. We don't have and which means we probably are losing taxes. How do we control that? Can we?
That is a difficult question because as we discussed, assessment services are kind of the key to that. Our role in that is to talk to assessments if and when we know that a certain number of units are being used as a hotel purpose as opposed to long-term. And that can be under current scenarios, whether it's this particular building or other similar buildings. It's one of the issues that assessment services has identified as it's tough to get a handle on it because depending on the building, sometimes the number of units varies.
Okay, so my question to you, Mr. Geldart, will you tell us what your level of short-term and long-term are?
Short answer.
Yes, thank you. We got that on record. All right. Other questions before we go to comments? Councillor Butler, did you have any questions?
So Councillor McKay asked about how many units are barrier free. So I'm looking at them and they're not looking very barrier free from the design. So I'm assuming that the design, this is just rough,
Okay.
like the interior of the spaces.
We are at relatively early stages of the interior.
Okay.
And the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
We have actually an expert in our team on barrier-free design. And
Okay.
they will be, and by the way, the building code is changing on this. The barrier-free requirements are extended, some of them to all the units.
Okay. So my question was sort of the difference between a barrier-free unit and an accessible unit.
Right.
If you will have degrees of accessibility with units, but you have to have some that are full-on barrier-free.
Right. So the full-on barrier-free unit has to have cooking available for person in a wheelchair, the bathroom available for person in a wheelchair. All of the turning circles in the unit have to be able to be managed by a person in a wheelchair on his or her own. And we comply with that requirement in every building we do. So it does change the units somewhat. The new units, which are called adaptable, will have all the doorways accessible to people in wheelchairs. They will not have, in general, lower cooking spaces or accessible showers.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Elliott?
At the design review committee last week, there was mention of 2 concrete ramps. Has one of them been removed or are there still
No,
2?
they're both there.
Do you really need 2?
Well, there's one, if you look on the screen, there's one here going up for people coming from this direction.
Okay.
Can you see the cursor?
Yep.
Yeah, so there's one here going this way for people who are approaching the building from the center of Main Street. And there's one here going up, which, as I mentioned at the design review, we might flip around, but there are quite a number of people crossing the road here coming from Willow Park. So we have one here for those people.
I'm just going to take a timing pulse for council. We haven't even got into comments. If we're finished questions, what I was going to do, I was going to start with Councillor Ingham so that I don't forget to look up there, and we can make comments. We don't need to finish tonight, and if you have more questions, but let me take a pulse. How are people, what is the general feeling of council? We've got a half an hour till the meeting was supposed to end. I don't know that we are going to get finished tonight, or do you want to stay till we do? And I'm just looking for some guidance. Okay.
And even after comments, if there are still questions or changes we'd like to see, maybe we need to come back again.
Yes, okay,
soon.
so,
Yeah,
well,
I'm not
so
sure.
if there are no other, yeah, I haven't eaten today, so, but I'm good. So what I'm gonna do is, I think Councillor McKay makes a good point. So let's start, and I'm gonna start with Councillor McKay. If you want to make a comment or ask a question, that's fine. And I'm gonna go around the horseshoe. I'm sorry, I said I'd start with Councillor Ingham. So I'm gonna do Councillor Ingham, and then I'm gonna start with Councillor McKay, go around to Councillor Elliott, then I'm going to comment, and then we'll take another pulse and see where we are. So Councillor Ingham, you may ask more questions or you may make a comment. If you
I
wish.
don't have any more
You
questions
don't
or
have
comment
to. but-
at this time, so thank you.
Okay, okay. Councillor McKay?
I don't really have any more questions, but as I was going through and kind of listening to all the things that were being asked and comments on, I did a shocking thing for myself, a checklist on both sides, a good and a maybe needs to change.
So unusual for you.
I know, sort of my process brain, but, so I went through like some of the good things and there are lots of good things. I think, you know, in essence of the whole project, I'd like to see it built. The energy is great, that like the energy conservation, that was a huge discussion at PAC the last time around. I know Isabel was there as well, as Isabel, not deputy mayor at the time. The bike storage, the charging stations. I actually think the entry to the parking, whether the money is enough or not, is a good space. I don't want to cross in the street. The art on the back and adding more art would be great. I actually think that the amenities on the second floor is essential to those spaces, because we talk about when we have in the East End, we want to build communities and have like spaces for people to enjoy it. Those units aren't large. So I think if you're planning on having social gatherings and those types of things, those amenity spaces are really crucial to having a good quality of life. And then the green spaces, hours outside, but still good to have. The things that I'd like to see differently were definitely the more art on that side. I'd like to see that ramp flipped as well, because then you can come up from that side. And if there is some beautiful art on that wall, it makes a really nice walking space through to the trails. I do not like the sign of any kind. The green wall would be great. I'd like to see some different cladding. I liked the first cladding better as well. More barrier free. Or at least really good way to make them interchangeable. I forget the word that you used, but something that was easily flipped. So if we had more individuals that needed that space, because we have a shortage of those in town. Would like to see affordable, if the rooftop was, if there's any way, I don't, because somewhere in there, I think it said that maybe we could add rooftop on that space, but it would only be for those who live there. Even if that's what it is, that would be fine. I think I would like to see, for me, also the timeline. At least the outside, I'd like to have a harder and faster space that's really, because the inside, while housing is certainly important, I hear a lot, I think Councillor Ingham said the same thing, that building is, it's the first thing you see when you come into town. People want it done. We actually had a WBDC meeting. Don't mind this balconies on 1 and 2, the front on 3 feel a little invasive into the space. I know people like to have balconies when they're living there, so I would hate to take those away, but I don't love them. And I don't know what the word is, maybe it's covenants, but are there ways to tell people what they can and can't have on their balconies? Because that is the first thing when you come into town, I see, or would like not to see barbecues, laundry.
I think we did that on
all
micro
kinds of things,
boutiques.
yeah.
I remember
Oh,
that
well, yeah.
discussion.
I don't want to see any of those things. So if there was greenery or, some nice furniture or whatever other people use, we can't dictate everything that's in there, but it is the very first thing. And when you're on at Willow Park, it would be a shame to not see nice things.
Councillor Butler?
Okay. The first thing I want to say is I want to tell Mr. Geldart, I appreciate your apology for the delays. Because it's been very hard to explain to folks. I'm in the public, we're all in the public. I might be in the public more than others. I don't really know, but at least 2 or 3 times a week, I get asked about that space. I worked across the street during the summer when the pounding was going on and there was some sense of hope. And then years went by. I worked in that space, near that space again this summer, and people actually asked me, oh, did they have to tear that building down? Because they thought that it was built over the course of the year and then it was torn down, like the spacing. So I appreciate that you gave a bit of an explanation, and now I feel like I can actually answer some questions to the public. I agree with a lot of what Councillor McKay said. I don't have a problem with the design. I just want something in the space. I'd love to have some sort of statement given to the public as to why this has been like this for this long, and a sense of the timelines. To go from 2028 in our package to hearing it could take 18 months. As soon as you get this, it could be up and done just like that. That's great. But when you've been waiting this long, I think 2028. I'm just going to keep thinking 2028 until something else comes back. Devin, our Director Lake, mentioned that the emphasis on the importance of this piece, it is true. I hear it all the time, how important that piece is as you're coming into town. So having so many delays and having this come back, it's been really detrimental to trying to stay positive about it. I feel better tonight. I feel better that we've had these discussions. I would like a little more accessible, at least the look of accessibility. I didn't find the plans very welcoming to all. And being a new building, even if it's 3 and 4 years out, there's going to be even more of an emphasis on welcoming and making it look as welcoming to everybody as possible. So I really think that needs to be thought out with every step. That's really all I had. I'm okay with the changes. I would like the public art piece. I would like most of the stuff that Councillor McKay said. It fits in really nicely with it being a welcoming piece into the town. It will be. So anyway, thank you so much for your presentation.
Councillor Palmer, do you have some comments?
Well, I can't get my laptop to open up here. I can't get my laptop to open up here, and I wrote my notes here. Is what does 5.1.1 3.7 on page 69 mean? So Devin, that's a question for you. So that's what I had, but I can't open it. Yeah, but but I can't open
While
it.
Devin's looking for that, do you have comments, general comments you want to make?
I don't, general comments. I think I've asked my questions with my comments. General comments, not at this point.
Well, Devin is looking for that. Councillor Elliott, do you have general comments?
Yeah, I liked the first iteration. I felt like the people who signed the petition in 2017 could live with that. 3.5 stories. It's
5.5 stories.
no
The original,
the
front.
sto-
Oh, the front.
So to me, this is the gateway to the downtown. And it should either blend in or stand out the same way that the Central Library does in Halifax. To me, it calls for a superb design because of the placement. Kind of feel like the 2018 iteration looked a little bit like a 1960s Holiday Inn. I can live with that, I can say. This one, is also, reminds me of the 1960s, but it's more like, oh. The latest iteration to me looks more like Eastern European modernity, and I see the Berlin Wall.
Brutalism?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Maybe it's just the colors, I'm not sure. But I feel like this is Mud Creek. This is where Wolfville started. I'm like putting on the heritage hat here, you know, we have 3 200-year-old buildings in that square, and they speak to that history. I'm just not sure if it all melds together the way it is now. Well, those are my comments.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And I apologize if I'm repeating myself or, I just want to address the housing question because I wanted to stress the fact that the previous council approved the development agreement, and I think largely because of a housing concern. The current council approved a 2-year extension, largely because of a housing concern. So I think we've demonstrated our commitment to housing for a solid, I don't know, 6 years at least. And I don't believe that taking this to 2028 is really a realistic response to our current housing crisis. I mean, it is a response to housing, and it's an important response, but it isn't a response to our immediate housing crisis. And so I think we need to kind of temper how we present this in terms of a response to housing, because this is we are talking 50 months away. It's 4 years and 2 months away from today that we would be renting these out according to what is in the plan. So I have a question still around, and I think we've mentioned this, the transformer. I would like to get a legal opinion on that before we go ahead with this, because I am concerned. I understand the efforts that are going to be made to house it, but I am concerned that if there is an accident, whatever that might be, it is on town property, and I want a clear answer as to liability. Is this our liability? Are we going to be then engaged in a lawsuit for years to come? So I think we need to talk about that, and whether, look at how might that transformer be placed within the boundaries of the property. We have 60 spots for, I think, bicycles right now, internal. Is that correct? Could we reduce that enough? Because I don't know if 60 is like 1 bicycle per unit. You may not need that many. So that's an area where I think there could be potentially compromise to accommodate relocating that transformer within the boundary of the building. I mean, largely the reason it's outside is because the building goes to the absolute extreme of the property line. And so we are accommodating as a town, we're accommodating the fact that the building is being built to the property line and then agreeing to put a private transformer in a public space. So I really do have a concern about that. The 5th floor step back going to the 2nd floor. I don't disagree with Councillor McKay's comments around an amenity, a space being important. However, if getting rid of that means that we can bring back the step back on the 4th floor, I would prefer that, because I think the look of the original with that step back to me it's much more attractive. It's a lot less bulky. This is actually a big building on a very small lot. And what we're doing is just building up, and I understand that this is in compliance with current code, but it's not really consistent with what we have on Main Street. And so I would like that the step back brought back. I think that the fact that there will be balconies kind of extends the living space, if you like. I see balconies as an extension of, it's a little mini living room or whatever. I mean, I do share concerns about what they might look like, but I think we've managed to do that with a micro boutique. So I actually, well, with what's in the balconies. Do they have barbecues and stuff on there?
No, they don't.
Right.
But the balconies themselves.
No, the balconies themselves, I agree with you, Mayor Donovan. They need to be looked at. But I think I like the idea of the balconies from the user's perspective, because I think it extends, 450 square feet to me is a really small apartment. But anyway, so that I would like to, I'm glad that I would remove the signage altogether. I don't think it adds interest. I don't think it's necessary to have a commercial looking wall there. I would stick to it just being green. And I just wanted to say, in terms of the Irving or the Ivany living wall, that was put up. I know this was put up at least 10 years ago. So I know that they're talking to you about the maintenance of what's currently there, but I do believe that in the last 10 years, there are new options available. There's new technology that makes the maintenance much easier. And this may be a little higher, but the Ivany wall is much, much wider. It is a big wall. And what we're looking at here is something that's taller, but much narrower. So it would not be the same, anywhere near, I don't think, the same size as what's there. But I would like to, if we could, revisit that issue, because I was talking to somebody who did exactly what's being proposed here about having a plant from the bottom and from the top, and it took 7 years on a 40-foot building for those two to meet. So I think the living wall would bring that greenery up by a number of years. And so I might still like, if we could, explore that. And I do feel, I confess, this it's unfortunate that this project didn't go to our current PAC, because you can see from the 2019 notes that those are really important meetings. So I would request that the review, when we make these changes, that our current PAC be given the opportunity to exercise their role in this type of process, because I don't, even though on the surface one might say these are minor changes, I don't see them really as minor, because the look of the building is significant and there's a lot of detail that we have discussed, in terms of town versus private property and all of that. I think it would be only fair to our current planning advisory committee that they have an opportunity to discuss this as part of their official role in any kind of development agreement. So that's
Right. Thank you. I generally agree with what all of my colleagues have said. A couple that resonated stronger with me, the signage issue. I think we're all on a page for that. The transformer issue, I have the same concerns. The parking impact that Councillor Palmer here brought up, I would wish that be looked at. But my big issue are those community rooms. And I have been here through all these meetings, when the original concept was that it's kind of dense, it was density bonusing, and people were concerned about losing the view. And so I think we imagined that one would be walking by and decide, oh, let's go upstairs, have a coffee and look at the view. Totally understand why that can't happen. So I don't want to revisit that. But I have to say, and I have said words that I won't repeat here, that those two rooms make absolutely no sense to me. Absolutely no sense. In fact, next door, we are going to have a beautiful, quite public building with the Legion that has exactly the same view. And I do agree with Councillor McKay, for those people who live in the building, not those of us who are walking by, but who live, community space is important. I know that I often talk to the residents in the apartments in Woodman's Grove on Woodman's Road, and they have quite an active internal social life in those community spaces. I absolutely think that's important. If it was my decision, I would say, get rid of those community rooms. If that means you can push the top floor back a bit, if you can create 2 more spaces for 2 more accessible spaces. If that means that instead of spending, because those are a lost leader to you, I think they are, and I just don't see, they may be used by your residents, they will not be used. There are other places that we got a great view in this town and nobody's going to walk by and use those. So I would strongly hope that that gets revisited, and whatever flexibility that gives you to create more parking spaces, to move a building back, to create 2 more accessible spaces. I would certainly be in support of that, because I think for the town and for you, it's a waste of space, is my nice way of saying what I have said otherwise. I am very concerned about, I don't care if it's a hotel or if it's a residence. My preference would be that it's housing, and that if we need a hotel, somebody builds a hotel. But I don't like this. We went through this with micro boutiques. I don't think I agree with what people have said. You certainly do not want to be have a year's lease and have somebody next door moving in every weekend. That's just a recipe for problems, and we sure don't need any more of those kind of problems in this town. So that's my view. I agree with my colleagues that sooner rather than later. I think that to go back to PAC is just a time waster now. I'm sorry that there are new people who weren't here with that, but I don't see that. I'm certainly happy to, should we go, and I'm going to ask you in a moment if we're going to move this to another meeting, to invite non-council members on PAC to even have a special public input so they can make their comments. I can see that, but for the time, given that we should move this forward, I don't see that, but that's just my view. Those are my comments. I feel that everybody else has touched on what I consider, but the community room is a non-starter for me. That just makes no sense. I understand why you had to do it, but it makes no sense. Are there, so I'm going to ask council. Jen, she was first. She said she didn't have any comments, so she was first. Jen, Councillor Ingham, do you feel like you'd like to make a comment now?
I guess I could.
Sure.
Most of my questions were answered and comments were already said. That's what happens when you're virtually. You can sit back and listen too. I guess I think it's really important that we do the East End wall really, really well. I'm not even so sure that we need to put up like the living wall there, but because it's the entrance coming in, and we all know that we have backed up traffic, and I live in that area, so it goes all the way back to the Blomidon Inn. So people are coming in. So I just think that side of the wall is very important to have a look at. And I just wanted to make that point. And as far as accessibility in the building, I mean, with the new built environment standards that are coming up and the new building code, I'm quite confident that they're going to be in place on this building. That's what's the really good thing about all new builds. They'll have to comply. So I'm not so concerned about that. It would be nice to have some more accessible units in there and some more parking spaces. But as far as the whole building, all new builds are going to have to comply with this standard. So I'm confident that it'll be a very accessible building to get in and out of. I guess that's probably it.
Thank you. So what it sounds like is that there's some more work to be done. We're probably not in a position to make a motion tonight, and I'm not sure even if we sat here for another 2 hours, we would be in a position, because there's some clear adjustments that council has mentioned. So shall we, I don't even know if we're adjourning or tabling, but, and Devin, maybe you can provide some direction.
So I think all of the comments, and thank you for that summary, Councillor McKay. And I've been taking notes throughout. So I'll need some time to work with these gentlemen on bringing something back. I think there's a number of trade-offs that have been presented here that will have to be, a decision will have to be made on certain aspects. And I I completely understand some of the comments, but some of these things have been debated multiple times already. What I would like direction on coming out of this is going back to the Planning Advisory Committee. And so I would encourage you to ask them for some feedback. We have done that. And that's why we invited them to the last meeting. And I appreciate the sentiment of going back.
Could we invite them to, if we, I'm assuming we're going to reconvene this when you've made some changes and with, I guess we can do whatever we want. We could invite them and then give them an opportunity for.
We have to do a public hearing, but at this point, I think it's really important for this to stay with council and really good direction be given, and we finalize this package and we move forward to a public hearing. So I think we really need to have our eye on the prize of moving this back to council quickly with an updated package that responds to this. And I don't think there's anything completely unreasonable in here. So I think we can work together here.
Certainly the timing that you've heard very clearly from some people would suggest that we're not going back to square one.
No, and so that was the main thing that for me. And I think I can't give you a date. We're gonna have to talk. We're gonna have to talk in the morning, and we'll chart a course and
Take
communicate
that.
with
Let me
council.
just check in. Council, are you ready to kind of stay this for tonight and then let staff come back? Is that?
I think something, just if we could just get a head nod on this, because this is how I've been talking about this project, is the sort of macro issues and the thrust of the project is being supported. And I think that's been
I
the
think that's what you
case
heard.
at design review and planning committee, and we're working through some fine detail that will, I need that detail to put into the development agreement to regulate this properly. So as long as that's how we're moving forward, I just want to clarify.
Is that Jen, you can just put your hand up, but those around the table, is that, so the general not the large project, there's support, but Devon has to work with the developer on the fine detail. Is that was your question?
Yes.
Yes. So are we good?
I still don't really have an answer to the PAC.
The answer was no.
Okay, and that I disagree. I think we should. I just think that we could time it so that there's a PAC meeting and then a council meeting. Like I don't see that is such a cumbersome project.
I think the issue is for Devon to do the work that he has to do, and I know he's full out, to schedule a PAC meeting and to be, that's not just an information meeting, that could set us back. And we don't normally do that in this situation.
I would
Now-
just say that I think we could get we could
Oh,
get
yeah.
additional comment
I
from the
was
members. that-
Suggesting invite them and have the chance for input, but not a PAC meeting and then another council meeting and a public hearing. I am concerned that we're going to run into the holiday season.
So input during a council meeting? Is that what you're saying? Like come up to public input? Like I just don't understand what that would look like.
I don't know, but I think that having a PAC, and that's my view. What does the rest of council feel? Those of you who are on PAC.
I honestly don't know.
Put your mic on, please, Wendy.
I'm thinking about our newest member who came from Vancouver and who looked at the plans and said, this could be anywhere in Vancouver.
Are they going to give us any information that they haven't already given?
They're
us,
gonna
or
have
we-
opinions for sure. Probably mirror mine.
I guess the process I envisioned is that we have made comments. Director Lake is going to meet with the two gentlemen, will make some changes, propose some changes. It's at that point that I would see with those new changes, it going to PAC and PAC then making recommendations to council. So because we are talking about changes. So I mean, I just don't know how else to involve.
Jody. Councillor
Uh,
McKay. Sorry.
Normally, I would feel exactly the same way. And the only reason why I don't this time is because it went through, I don't know, 6 years of PAC and then to council, and it's come back to council for the amendments, for the extension and then the amendments. So I think at some point, we are the decision makers and we have to be the decision maker. So two of them sat on WBDC. We actually talked about it this morning too. So I think they are totally engaged and will totally give feedback as residents and members of the committee anyway. So I think, I mean, if we wanted to have them here and have a little PAC meeting beforehand and then us and have them give input, but having them give feedback in a formal meeting, sending Director Lake back to the table, compiling all that and getting it back to us again, I think we're looking at months again before you can find a time to make a meeting, let him do the work, bring it back as a package, because it's a lot of work for him to do that, for you to do that, I think. I don't want to speak for you, but I think it is, and then to do it again. So I think we'd be well into January before that would come back to
I
us.
think you can correct me, you were at the table too, but I don't think this is abnormal. I think this is the process with the church brewery, that it sat in PAC for a while and then it did go back and forth in council, but there's a point at which this is the decision-making body. There certainly are opportunities for members, either through WBDC or I'm prepared to, juggle our next committee of the whole meeting so that PAC members can come sit in the front row and have a part on the agenda that says, make your comments, ask your questions.
The other tool that we sometimes use with design review, I mean, all of these committees are tools for council at the end of the day, right? So you're getting feedback and input. Some towns don't have a PAC, just to put that in
Sometimes
perspective.
council is the PAC.
Right, or it's largely the PAC. So we have received feedback from the PAC members on where we're at today. And so we can engage those members again, and we can be very forthcoming about what the feedback was. We can even go back to the design review committee and bring back other information. That's great in that format that we're talking about. And again, it just benefits council. So I don't think it's an either or. I think we can still build that in, but the process is being held by council at this point. We're talking about
At some point it moves to council and it may go
Yes.
back and forth in council, but that's the process that we have used. Devin, do you have enough from us tonight and council? Have you made all the comments that you want so that Devin will bring along with the developer back something that mirrors those comments for further discussion?
Yes, and I just want to underscore again that all of these issues, there will be some trade-offs. And so, we can't necessarily go through my notes and check everything off. So there'll be some decisions to be made, and we'll bring back a coherent package to be considered.
Good. How's Deputy Mayor?
Can I move that we adjourn? Is that what you were looking for?
I was just wanting to make sure that we were, there's one more
Oh, I'm
section of
sorry.
public input. Would anybody in the audience care to come for public input? You have 3 minutes to talk. Do we have a gentleman? Did I see a hand? Yes, can come up to the mic, please. Just say your name and your address, and you have 4 minutes to make your comments, and it can be about this, or you can.
Okay, yeah. I just received that today, the information. Thank you.
Your
my
name, please,
initial-
and your address. Your
Oh,
name
yeah,
and
sorry, Alan Riley, 250 Main Street. Okay. And I showed those photos to my daughter, my 11-year-old Kaida, and she saw the comparisons of before and the previous one and the current one now. And she said, it doesn't seem to be the right fit for Wolfville. It's just something about it doesn't fit in. It looks more like a New Minas type of building.
Turn that mic off.
And she said, the balconies, I don't know about that, And it was curious because all the things she mentioned, I sort of sent a short email this afternoon about that. I do have a problem with all the 18 balconies on the south side. I know what balconies can happen in the future. There can be a hodgepodge, there can be noise, and I've seen the ones down there, further on down there, they're not used that much. So I see a big problems with the balconies, and aesthetically, it doesn't look, for me, very good. The signage, we've already discussed that. I have straight off from the bat, I didn't like that. I'd sooner have it natural. I'd sooner have what you have, a living garden. I've seen those living gardens in Singapore, and they've got taller buildings than this, and they still all meet. They're still green. Even though the climate is different, I'm sure that we can do better than what we saw right now of having vines. And having a name on there on the side, I don't see that at all. It seems to be repetitive. We don't need names because it comes across, again, more like a hotel. The viewing area, I agree. I don't think it's worthwhile having the viewing area because I see security problems. I see public not knowing aware of it, and too many headaches. And I agree that not even bother because you've got enough views like the Lions. There's just 2 floors up as well, and they're natural with the parks. The immediate impact when I look at that design is hotel motel. It just sticks out aesthetically. To me, it's not very pleasing, and I think a big part of that is with the balconies. And when you're looking at short term and long term, you're getting into part of control. Who's going to control what goes on these balconies, the noise levels, the short term? What ownership do they have for short term in material? You see, students, I'm generalizing here, but if they don't own the property, they don't put as much effort into it. And if there's shortage of residents in this area, I don't think short term, I would suggest you make the apartments bigger, but then that comes to economics. 450 square feet and all the rest of it, these are really small apartments. If you look at them, some of them are not even bigger than this room. So you have to look at the size.
You have used your 4 minutes. So
Yeah,
did you
I'm
want to
sorry.
wrap up? That's okay.
Okay, I finished anyway.
Thank you
Oh,
so
yeah,
much,
one
Dr.
more
Ryan.
thing.
Go ahead.
The piers, I think they should be topped off. There's a safety issue there.
The
You
what?
could get children. The piers right now in the ground.
Oh, currently before they build.
Yeah, they're not topped off, many of them. So
Thank
it's
you.
very dangerous. It's a safety issue here. Anybody that
Piles.
involved
Good.
in it?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Is there anybody else for public input? Carolyn, say your name and your address, please.
My name's Caroline Whitby. I live on Maple Avenue in Wolfville. I think I have not been involved in this process with this building up until this point. I was not aware that a percentage of this building was being considered as hotel or short-term accommodation. Recognizing the housing crisis we're in, I would really like to see that it be all housing. And I know this has implications on cost, but some affordable housing because it's right downtown and people who would then have access who do not have transportation. And my other point is a question is, if I understand, having had a very quick look at the information, is the height of the building, although it meets the 4-story standard, which is allowed, the height of the building is going from about 39 feet to about 51 without whatever's on top. Is that correct, or have I misread the information?
Yes, the height is increasing.
Thank you. That is a concern to me, particularly as it's a street wall. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else? Michael? No? Going once? And I'm assuming there's nobody online, Laura? Laura's still with us. All right. Would we
No,
like-
there's no one here. You're good.
Thank you, Laura.
I'm still here.
Yeah, good to know. Would we entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. And seconded by Councillor McKay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned and to come back in this same group for an update and further discussion. Thank you, staff, for coming in on the special meeting night, and members of the public. Thank you, and the presenters.